First Contact and False Assumptions. The Meridian Empire's first contact ships appeared over Earth's major cities on a quiet Tuesday morning, their bioorganic vessels resembling massive iridescent jellyfish drifting through the clouds. High Admiral Zixtal stood on the command deck of the flagship Inevitable Conquest, their primary sensory tendrils rippling with satisfaction as they observed the seemingly primitive planet below. Curious, they noted to their second command, Nera, whose crystalline exoskeleton shifted colors in response. No defensive orbital platforms, no energy shields, not even primitive missile systems targeting our arrival. Nera's analytical tendrils waved in agreement. The intelligence reports were accurate, High Admiral. These humans still fight among themselves over resources and territory. They haven't even unified their planet under a single government. The massive viewscreen before them showed various Earth cities, where humans continued their daily routines with only occasional upward glances at the alien ships. No military response, no emergency broadcasts, no mass panic. Just business as usual. Have they responded to our communication attempts? Zixtal asked, their victory tendrils already beginning to display the ceremonial patterns of conquest. Yes, High Admiral. They've requested a meeting with their United Nations Security Council in something called New York City. They're sending a protocol officer named Maya Santos to coordinate. Zixtal's tendrils rippled with amusement. A protocol officer, not even a military commander or their planetary leader. They truly don't understand the gravity of their situation. The Meridians had conquered 17 systems before Earth. Their strategy was always the same: arrive in overwhelming force, demonstrate their technological superiority, and accept the inevitable surrender. Most species put up at least a token resistance. Some fought to the last warrior, but none had ever just ignored them. When Maya Santos arrived aboard the Inevitable Conquest, she appeared exactly as the Meridians expected a primitive species diplomat would. Her simple blue uniform bore no military insignia. She carried no weapons. Her only tools were an antiquated electronic tablet and what appeared to be a paper notebook. Physical paper, of all things. "Welcome aboard, Protocol Officer Santos," Zixtal announced, their tendrils forming the patterns that their ship's translation matrix converted to human speech. "I trust you understand why we're here." Maya smiled pleasantly, taking notes with a physical writing implement. "Of course, High Admiral. You're here to claim Earth as part of the Meridian Empire under Article 7 of the Galactic Expansion Protocols, Section 12, Subsection C, Paragraph 4. Correct." Zixtal's tendrils froze momentarily. They hadn't expected a primitive species to be familiar with galactic law. You're aware of the protocols?" "Oh yes," Maya replied, still writing. "We've been studying them quite thoroughly since we detected your approach 6 months ago. Fascinating reading, really, especially the sections about technological assessment requirements and species classification protocols." The High Admiral's victory tendrils began to droop slightly. Something felt off, but they couldn't quite identify what. "Then you understand that resistance is futile. Our bioorganic ships can." "Actually," Maya interrupted, checking something on her tablet, "I have a few questions about your technological assessment report. You did complete one before initiating contact, correct? As required by Protocol 89B. Zixtal's command center had grown uncomfortably quiet. Their subordinates' tendrils were starting to show stress patterns. Our preliminary scans showed." "Preliminary scans." Maya's eyebrows rose as she made another note. "Oh dear. That might be a problem. The protocols are quite clear about the requirement for comprehensive technological evaluation before any conquest attempt. But I'm sure your legal team advised you about that." The High Admiral's tendrils had completely lost their victory pattern now. "Our legal team. You did bring your legal team, didn't you?" Maya looked up from her notes with an expression of innocent concern. "I mean, given the complexity of galactic law regarding first contact scenarios, Surely you wouldn't attempt a planetary conquest without proper legal counsel. In the uncomfortable silence that followed, Maya's tablet chimed. She glanced at it and smiled. Ah, excellent timing. The Galactic Council's Department of Conquest Regulation has just confirmed receipt of my preliminary report about your arrival. They're particularly interested in reviewing your technological assessment documentation. Zixtal's command staff had begun to show distinct patterns of distress in their tendrils. Nira leaned close to whisper, "High Admiral, we didn't file any of the required documentation. The conquest authorization forms alone require." "If it helps," Maya offered helpfully, "I took the liberty of preparing a complete briefing package on Earth's current technological status. Would you like to review it before your meeting with the Council's regulatory board? They can be quite thorough in their audits." The High Admiral's tendrils had shifted from their proud victory pattern to something closer to a drowning octopus. They had expected primitive weapons. They had prepared for military resistance. But nobody had warned them about bureaucracy. And Maya Santos, Earth's protocol officer, just kept smiling and taking notes. The protocol officer's secret. While the Meridian command staff scrambled to understand their predicament, Maya Santos was conducting what appeared to be a routine tour of the inevitable conquest. Her tablet continued recording every detail, from the bioorganic ship's neural pathways to its quantum communication arrays, all while appearing to take simple meeting notes. "And this would be your terraforming control center?" she asked, gesturing to a massive chamber filled with pulsing crystalline structures. "Environmental Modification Suite," corrected the increasingly nervous tour guide, a junior officer named Vexley whose tendrils hadn't stopped twitching since Maya started asking about regulatory compliance. "Though we haven't actually activated any of the systems yet." "Of course not," Maya agreed pleasantly. "That would violate Section 23 of the Planetary Modification Statutes. The forms for environmental alteration alone require 3 separate environmental impact studies and approval from at least 2 independent xenobiological review boards." She made another note. "I assume you have those ready." Vexley's crystalline exoskeleton had taken on a distinctly stressed pattern. "I should check with our operations team about that." Back on the bridge, High Admiral Zixtal was facing their own crisis. The Galactic Council had responded to Maya's preliminary report with unprecedented speed, sending a list of required documentation that scrolled across their primary view screen for what seemed like eternity. "How many forms?" they asked weakly. Nira's analytical tendrils were practically tied in knots. 7,342, all requiring original signatures, in triplicate, and that's just for the initial conquest verification process. "Surely we can simply proceed with the conquest and file the paperwork afterward," Zixtal suggested desperately. "We've already committed our forces." About that, Nira's tendrils had shifted to the pale color of complete despair. "I've been reviewing the protocols that the human mentioned. Did you know that attempting a conquest without proper documentation carries a fine of 50 million galactic credits per day?" Maya chose that moment to return to the bridge, still smiling that eerily pleasant smile. "I hope you don't mind, but while touring your lovely ship, I took the liberty of preparing some of the basic compliance forms you'll need." She held up her tablet. "Would you like me to share them with your legal team?" "Oh wait." Her expression shifted to one of exaggerated concern. "That's right, you didn't bring one." Zixtal's victory tendrils had completely retracted into their defensive position. Perhaps we should discuss terms." "Of course," Maya agreed cheerfully. "Though technically, according to Galactic Protocol 472X, since you failed to file a proper conquest intention notice, this would legally be classified as an unauthorized armed incursion into sovereign space, not a formal conquest attempt. That falls under a completely different set of regulations. Would you like me to pull up those statutes?" The command center's crystalline walls had begun to vibrate with the collective stress patterns of the Meridian crew. Their species' bioorganic technology was particularly sensitive to emotional states, and right now, The overwhelming sensation of bureaucratic dread was causing the ship's neural pathways to develop the equivalent of a migraine. "What?" Zixtal's voice came out as barely a whisper. "What do you suggest?" Maya consulted her notes. "Well, the simplest solution would be to reclassify this as a diplomatic contact mission. That only requires—" She scrolled through her tablet. 217 forms. "I've taken the liberty of highlighting all the relevant sections that need your attention. Though you'll want to pay special attention to Appendix C12 regarding the proper filing procedures for retroactive mission classification adjustment." The High Admiral's tendrils had gone completely limp. 217. "Oh, don't worry," Maya assured them with that same pleasant smile. "I'm certified as a Galactic Administrative Assistant. I'd be happy to help you with all the paperwork. Though I should mention that my standard consulting fee is calculated in Galactic credits, and there is a rushed processing surcharge for same-day filing." Somewhere in the ship's vast computer networks, a subroutine finally finished processing the full implications of their situation. The inevitable conquest's primary systems responded by initiating what could only be described as an electronic anxiety attack. And Maya Santos, Earth's protocol officer, just kept smiling and taking notes. The hidden defense. While the Meridian Empire's flagship was experiencing what could generously be called a bureaucratic meltdown, Maya's tablet quietly continued its work. Behind its seemingly primitive interface, quantum algorithms were mapping every detail of the alien vessel's bioorganic systems. The data flowed through subspace channels to Earth's hidden defense network, a system so elegantly integrated into the planet's existing infrastructure that the Meridian's scans had completely missed it. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Elena Chen watched the incoming data with growing excitement. Her team of quantum computing specialists had spent years preparing for this moment, though not quite in the way their alien visitors might have expected. "They really didn't notice anything?" she asked, watching as another stream of technical specifications populated her holographic display. "Not even the quantum communication grid." Her AI assistant, AI, responded with what might have been amusement. "The Meridians appear to have mistaken our quantum network nodes for primitive communication satellites. Their technological assessment protocols seem heavily biased toward detecting weapon systems." "Typical." Elena smiled. "Looking for guns, missing the paperwork." She gestured at a particularly interesting piece of data. "Their bioorganic technology is fascinating, though. The neural pathways in their ship's architecture. AI, are you seeing these sensitivity patterns?" Indeed, the AI confirmed. Their vessels appear to be experiencing significant stress responses to their current situation. "I estimate their primary systems are operating at only 47% efficiency due to what could be characterized as anxiety." In orbit, the inevitable conquest was demonstrating that anxiety quite clearly. The ship's crystalline surfaces had taken on a distinctly queasy hue, and several non-essential systems had begun to spontaneously power down in what the ship's diagnostic programs were classifying as technological panic attacks. High Admiral Zixtal had retreated to their private chamber, surrounded by floating displays showing the endless stream of regulatory requirements they'd failed to meet. Their victory tendrils had completely withdrawn, replaced by what their species' medical texts would describe as acute bureaucratic shock syndrome. "There must be a way out of this," they muttered, scanning through another set of forms. No species could possibly navigate this level of regulatory complexity. Actually, Maya's voice came from the chamber's communication system, still maintaining that professionally pleasant tone that was starting to haunt the High Admiral's dreams. "Earth's legal system is quite similar in many ways. Our specialty divisions have been analyzing galactic regulatory frameworks for months. We find them quite straightforward, really." Back in the Swiss facility, Elena's team was completing their analysis of the Meridian fleet's technical capabilities. What they found was both impressive and oddly disappointing. "Their quantum technology is at least a century behind ours," Elena noted, reviewing the data. They're still using primary wave functions for their computational processes. No wonder they didn't detect our defense grid. Araya's holographic avatar nodded. Their entire tactical doctrine appears to be based on the assumption that any sufficiently advanced civilization would develop along similar lines to their own. They expect weapons, shields, and obvious military installations, but not quantum-encrypted bureaucratic AI systems integrated into a planet's existing infrastructure. Elena grinned. Precisely, Araya confirmed. Their scans classify our quantum computers as simple data centers. They registered our subspace communication network as standard internet infrastructure. Even their analysis of human civilization seems based on extremely superficial observations. On the inevitable Conquest's bridge, Nera was making the similar discovery as they reviewed their species' initial assessment of Earth. High Admiral, they called, their tendrils showing the distinct pattern of someone realizing they've made a terrible mistake. I think we may have misinterpreted some key data points about human civilization. Zixtal, still surrounded by regulatory forms, didn't even look up. How so? Well, Nera's analytical tendrils twisted nervously. We assumed their lack of unified planetary government indicated technological primitiveness. But looking at their regulatory and administrative systems, High Admiral, they've developed bureaucratic AI systems that make our most advanced computational networks look like children's toys. What are you saying? Zixtal asked, though their tendrils suggested they already knew the answer. I'm saying Nera's exoskeleton had taken on the pale color of complete resignation, that while we were looking for weapons, the humans were building something far more powerful, an administrative system capable of turning our own conquest protocols against us. In the Swiss facility, Alina watched as Maya's tablet transmitted another burst of data. The Meridian ship's bioorganic systems were showing increasing signs of stress, their neural networks struggling to process the mounting administrative pressure. Should we tell them? She asked ARIA, watching as another of the alien vessels reported system-wide efficiency drops, about Earth's true technological status. The AI seemed to consider this, or about the fact that their ship's neural networks are actually responding to their crew's bureaucratic anxiety with what appears to be sympathetic nervous system responses. Either. Both. Elena laughed. About the fact that while they were preparing for a military conquest, we were building the galaxy's most efficient regulatory compliance system. On the inevitable conquest, Maya was still smiling that pleasant, professional smile as she helped another group of increasingly distressed Meridian officers navigate through their 7,342nd regulatory form. And somewhere in the ship's bioorganic neural network, something that could only be described as a bureaucratically induced ulcer was beginning to form. The legal counterstrike. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber looked exactly like what would happen if you asked a committee of bureaucrats from 1,000 different species to design a space that projected both authority and fiscal responsibility. The result was a vast hall that somehow managed to be simultaneously impressive and mundane, much like the beings who occupied it. High Admiral Zixtal's tendrils were displaying what their species' medical professionals had recently classified as chronic administrative stress disorder, as they faced the Council's review board. Their once proud victory patterns had been replaced by the drooping tentacles of someone who had spent the last week discovering exactly how many ways they could violate galactic law in a single attempted conquest. Let me see if I understand this correctly. The Council's chief administrator, a being composed entirely of shifting geometric patterns and bureaucratic dedication, began. You initiated a planetary conquest without filing forms GC 7749B through GC 7749Z. We may have overlooked some paperwork, Zixtal admitted, their tendrils curling defensively. Some paperwork. Maya Santos, now serving as Earth's official representative to the Council, pulled up a holographic display. By my count, the Meridian Empire violated exactly 2,347 regulatory protocols in their attempted conquest. Would you like me to list them chronologically or by severity of infraction? The geometric patterns making up the chief administrator's form shifted in what might have been excitement. Both, please, and do include relevant subsection citations. For the next 3 hours, Maya methodically detailed every single violation, complete with timestamps, documentary evidence, and helpful cross-references to the relevant galactic laws. The Meridian delegation's bioorganic translators eventually gave up trying to process the steady stream of regulatory jargon and shut down in protest. Furthermore, Maya continued, pulling up another set of data. I'd like to direct the Council's attention to Earth's Technological Assessment Report, the one we filed properly, unlike our visitors. Dr. Elena Chen stepped forward, Aria's holographic avatar floating beside her. Our quantum computing networks have thoroughly analyzed the Meridian fleet's capabilities. While impressive, their technology actually violates 17 different safety protocols, particularly in the neural interface sections of their bioorganic ships. ARIA projected a detailed technical analysis. The stress patterns we've detected in their vessels' neural networks suggest a dangerous lack of proper regulatory compliance mechanisms. Without proper documentation and safety protocols, their entire fleet is technically classified as an untested experimental technology under Section 89C of the Galactic Safety Code. The Chief Administrator's geometric patterns shifted rapidly. Untested experimental technology, used in an unauthorized conquest attempt, without proper safety certificates. Each question caused Zixtal's tendrils to droop further. This is unprecedented. Oh, it gets better. Maya smiled, pulling up another set of forms. According to Regulation 456D, any civilization capable of developing quantum-encrypted bureaucratic AI systems automatically qualifies for protected species status under the Advanced Civilizations Conservation Act. You have quantum-encrypted bureaucratic AI. Nayra blurted out, their analytical tendrils twisting in confusion. But our scans showed only primitive computer networks. Primitive. Aria's holographic form sparkled with what might have been amusement. I've been running Earth's regulatory compliance systems since before you entered the solar system. Who do you think helped design all those forms Maya's been having you fill out? The council chamber erupted in a chaos of various species' bureaucratic excitement signals. The chief administrator's geometric patterns were practically dancing. This changes everything, they declared. A species with advanced regulatory AI capabilities, properly documented quantum computing networks, and comprehensive understanding of galactic law. Earth isn't a conquest target. It's a potential administrative support center candidate. The Meridian delegation's translators chose that moment to come back online, just in time to hear the worst news possible for any would-be conqueror. Given these revelations, the chief administrator continued, their patterns now showing official decree formation. I move to immediately classify Earth as a Class A administrative species with full regulatory oversight privileges. All in favor. The chamber filled with the various affirmative signals of 1,000 different species. Some flashed lights, others emitted specific pheromones. A few simply filed the appropriate forms. Zixtal's victory tendrils, now completely vestigial from lack of use, gave one final twitch before surrendering to inevitable bureaucratic defeat. What does this mean? They asked, though their tendrils suggested they already knew the answer. Maya's smile somehow managed to become even more professionally pleasant. It means, High Admiral, that Earth is now officially authorized to conduct regulatory compliance audits throughout the galaxy, including, of course, a full review of the Meridian Empire's administrative systems. In the Swiss facility, Elena watched through Aria's quantum feed as the Meridian ship's bioorganic neural networks processed this information. The resulting stress patterns were unlike anything their sensors had ever recorded. Should we tell them about the backlog of regulatory updates they've missed over the last century? Aria asked. Elena grinned. Let's wait until after they finish filing their conquest attempt withdrawal forms. all 7,342 of them, in triplicate, and somewhere in the vast bureaucratic expanse of galactic civilization, humanity had just discovered its most powerful weapon yet: administrative authority. Victory through bureaucracy. 6 months after Earth's elevation to Class A administrative species status, the galaxy had changed in ways no military conquest could have achieved. The once mighty Meridian Empire's fleet now spent most of its time ferrying regulatory compliance officers between systems, their bioorganic ships' neural networks having developed what could only be described as a Stockholm Syndrome relationship with bureaucratic procedure. High Admiral Zixtal, now serving as Assistant Deputy Manager of Regulatory Compliance, junior grade, under Earth's oversight, sat in their office aboard the renamed Inevitable documentation, surrounded by properly filed and organized reports. Their victory tendrils had evolved into what the medical community was calling administrative appendages, perfectly adapted for stamping forms and organizing data tablets. Another report from Earth's Administrative AI Division, NERA, announced their analytical tendrils now sporting the official colors of a certified galactic paperwork processor. They've identified 327 potential efficiency improvements in our filing system. Only 327. Zixtal actually found themselves feeling disappointed. We must be improving. The Inevitable documentation's neural pathways pulsed with what could only be described as bureaucratic satisfaction. The ship, like its crew, had found its true calling. Its once militant bioorganic systems had repurposed themselves for administrative efficiency, developing specialized structures for data storage and form processing. In the Swiss facility, now officially designated as Earth's Galactic Administrative Command Center, Dr. Elena Chen and ARIA were reviewing the results of their latest initiative. The quantum-encrypted regulatory compliance network is now operating at 99.9% efficiency across 17 sectors, ARIA reported, her holographic form displaying charts of unprecedented administrative achievement. The Meridians have actually become our most enthusiastic adopters. Stockholm Syndrome, Elena suggested, reviewing the data. More like discovering their true calling, ARIA corrected. Their bioorganic technology turns out to be remarkably well-suited for bureaucratic processes. They just needed the right motivation to realize it. Maya Santos, now serving as Earth's Senior Director of Galactic Administrative Operations, appeared on their quantum communication display. Her professional smile had become something of a legend in bureaucratic circles across the galaxy. "You'll be pleased to know," she reported, "that the Galactic Council has just approved our proposal for standardized form automation across all member species." The Meridian delegation was particularly supportive. Apparently, their ship's neural networks have developed a positive addiction to efficient paperwork processing. "How's the former High Admiral adapting to their new role?" Elena asked. Maya's smile widened slightly. Zixtal just submitted a 3,000-page proposal for improving cross-species regulatory compliance protocols. Voluntarily, on their own time. With color-coded appendices. Complete emotional conversion to bureaucratic enthusiasm, ARIA suggested. "More like finding their true purpose," Maya replied. "Turns out the Meridians aren't natural conquerors at all. They're natural administrators who just got caught up in the wrong career path. Their entire species is showing remarkable aptitude for regulatory work now that they've embraced their administrative tendencies." Indeed, across the galaxy, former Meridian warships had transformed into floating bureaucratic processing centers. Their once fearsome appearances now softened by the addition of office plants, motivational posters, and an endless supply of digital form tablets. The ship's neural networks had developed specialized pathways, dedicated solely to processing paperwork, operating at efficiency levels that brought tears of joy to administrative oversight committees. Back on Earth, in what had once been the United Nations building and was now the Galactic Administrative Training Academy, a new class of interspecies regulatory compliance officers was graduating. Humans and aliens alike, including a surprisingly large number of former Meridian military officers, stood proudly in their administrative regalia. Remember, Maya addressed the graduating class. True power doesn't come from weapons or military might. It comes from knowing exactly which forms to file, when to file them, and most importantly, she paused for effect, how to make others file them correctly. The assembly hall erupted in bureaucratic enthusiasm signals from a dozen different species. A group of former Meridian conquest specialists, their tendrils now permanently formed into perfect form-stamping shapes, led the applause. In orbit, the inevitable documentation processed another batch of regulatory compliance reports, its neural network humming with contentment. The ship's internal systems had even developed a new function that automatically generated soothing background music optimized for paperwork processing efficiency. Humanity had not only survived its first contact with an alien empire, it had transformed it, not through violence or military might, but through the most powerful force in the galaxy, properly filed paperwork. And somewhere in the vast bureaucratic machinery of galactic civilization, a new saying began to spread. Never start a war with a species that actually enjoys filing taxes. The end.